Thanks so much for talking with us today, Joe Sestak.
Good to be with you, Steve, on such a day. Thank you.
When you reflect, when you think back 14 years ago today, what sticks out in your mind?
What most sticks out in my mind is what happened at the Pentagon. I had been stationed at the Pentagon that day, and I had walked out about 30 minutes prior to the plane coming in. I'd gone down the street a couple miles for a meeting at the Center for Naval Analysis when we then heard what was happening to the Twin Towers and then the Pentagon. I turned around and went back. I had to fight my way through a lot of things to get to the hill that overlooks it. Things were cordoned off by the time I got there. And I looked down and saw that cruelty, that damage. And then over time, before I went to the command center, as we established up there for the Navy, I saw individuals coming up. One was a man who had worked for me, actually was working for me. He was burned, seriously. He had gone back in, and at an office that I had commanded or been in charge of about 6 months earlier, a new metal door had been constructed, and he had gone back in and heard yelling and screaming, and yet just tried to open that door, burned himself tremendously, just trying to save some people inside from the fires that evidently were engulfing. They couldn't get out because the door had expanded and the damage. I saw that day true cruelty, but I saw that human bravery that nobody but Americans have, and I think persists today, and is the resilience we have behind us today in doing what we have to do around the world, this global war of terror, in order to preserve America's security. And that's what most sticks in my mind.
On that day, on September 11th at 9:37 a.m., that's when the hijackers aboard Flight 77 crashed that plane into the western facade of the Pentagon in Washington, killing 59 aboard the plane and 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building. As the day progressed and as the days went on, what was your role in helping as part of your job? What did you then do as part of your role in the American military?
That hill that I spoke about, the Marine Corps had a building up there. It used to be Navy and Marine Corps. We had some personnel offices there. And that's where I went to after the initial watching this. And we began to establish right there a command center. And eventually the vice chief of naval operations showed up. And that's where the Navy impromptu established what we most needed, the command and control. And then we began the first act that needed to be done, trying to locate heads of all the offices in the naval place there. We had their records as who had them, and tried, because personnel office, other means, to locate who's there, who got out, and trying to have every office that had someone in charge, like I was in charge of my office, report who did they know had been reported on, etc. And we started a telephone tree, and we had many of us those set up for an emergency because we were on short callback to the Pentagon Kids Emergency. That was our first act that night, and I don't know, I think I got home about 4 or 5 that morning on it. We couldn't call anywhere, so my wife didn't even know where I was, and I couldn't go home. I'd had my daughter had been born just a few months before, my first and only child, but I just couldn't go home. And a reporter got through to my home there and asked a Wall Street a reporter, I think he works for the Wall Street Journal now, called home to ask how I was. Believe it or not, it was a journalist who finally got through. He didn't know. And it wasn't until the wee hours that somebody from my staff got through. But that's what I had to focus on, was the mission right there of it. About a day or two later, the Chief of Naval Operations called me and said, I need you to now establish for us the Navy's, what came to be known as the Navy's anti-terrorism unit on the strategic and operational level. and it came to be known as Deep Blue, which eventually took me 2 months after or so. We went into Afghanistan. I went on the ground there for a short mission. I mean, the world changed that day for us. We used to like away games. We wanted our wars over there. And suddenly we had this home game where they had struck us. And we needed to go and do things. Different kind of fighting than we ever did. My classmate from the Naval Academy was there in Afghanistan, the head SEAL, when I went in. He was riding horses or donkeys to get around because that's what it took in those rugged terrains. And so not only did this was personal, but strategically, we in the Navy had to change of how we were doing warfare because it was a totally different type.
A lot has happened in the 14 years since September 11th, 2001. We went into Afghanistan. We went deep into Iraq. And now we're starting to see a little bit of a turnaround. 14 years is a long time, but not really all that long when it comes to a historical context. What did you see as you look back on that 14-year period that impressed you as movement we as a nation should have made? And what did you see in the 14 years, Joe, that maybe makes you think we could have done it a different or a better way?
On the first part of that, what most impressed me is that right after this happened, I was being called by people who used to work for me and had gotten out of the service to go on to other lives and wanted to get back in. 2 nights ago, I held an open town hall at Villanova University in Iran. The young midshipman at the ROTC unit hosted me, and a young midshipman afterwards came up to me and said, "My father's Pat Hyman." I said, "Yeah, I saw him a few years ago. He's up in Erie." He said, "Please pass my best to him, but also you need to know that your father worked for me when I commanded the Sammy B. Roberts. He called me the day or two after the strike, went to the Pentagon, and said," and it was a captain, said, "Captain, how can I get back in to help out?" That's what most impressed me. When I went on the ground in Afghanistan, then came out, crew command of my carrier battle group, we had the world in our hands. I had 30 ships commanded by me, but only 10 of them were U.S. The other 20 were non-U.S. The world had coalesced around our leadership because we had been struck, the beacon of liberty and democracy. I had 4 Japanese ships there. They hadn't been out of the Sea of Japan, Steve, since World War II. Greek ships, Australians and others. That's what most impressed me. Our people, our men and women, and the world with us together against this common threat at that time. And second, what was different is several things. One was judgment, that we mistook Iraq for the global war of terror. We never finished the job. When I was told to take my carrier battle group away from Afghanistan into the Straits of Hormuz and then into the Persian Gulf for what we thought would be the running start to the war, I went into Bahrain to meet the 3rd Fleet commander we had at his headquarters, who I worked for. And he said, "What do you think, Joe?" And I said, "We're ready to go, if that's what we've got to do." And he said, "No, what do you personally think?" I said, "This is a tragedy to do this strike when we're not done Afghanistan yet. How can we divide our forces, and where's the clear and present danger for us?" The second thing, though, I think better we could have done is change our military procurement even more, and that's a lot of what I had to do in that Deep Blue strike anti-terrorism unit, to away from just how many vessels we have to knowledge type of capability, to know where bin Laden is hiding, to command cyberspace, to read the other side's mail, to know what's happening on the other side, so that you don't maybe need as many ships. What you need is the ability to kind of use the internet or to use cyberspace to know what the bad guy's about to do so you can move more agile and quickly. We're getting to that, but I think we could have moved more rapidly towards that.
In closing, Joe, this year's anniversary of September 11th comes as Congress is weighing whether to start providing financing for the Memorial Plaza, whether to extend programs that promised billions of dollars in compensation and medical care to September 11th responders and survivors. They're set to expire next year. Where do you think that's going to go, and where do you think that should go?
We owe the first responders exactly the same that we do for our veterans. I don't think we do our veterans well enough. And I am a strong supporter of the bills and the efforts that we have tried to get done down there in the Senate and the Congress. Those first responders are equal to the military. I remember as a congressman going to to a dedication of a new memorial for the military, but as they undid the Army, the Navy, the Marine, each of the services, and unveiled the new structure for them, they then undid one for our firefighters and our police officers, because they wanted to rightly say all of these are now equal, now that we have home games. And, you know, one of our own senators has opposed that bill. And that bill to help the first responders, because Senator Toomey said, well, it's too expensive. And so, look, this is a wonderful day to keep in our memories because of the tragedy that occurred, but the bravery of those that served, not just in the military where I was, but those first responders. I watched them down there at the Pentagon from the Hill. They are just equal warriors for our nation. How can we not give them what they deserve to recover from their illnesses, often acquired there in places like the Twin Towers, as they try to salvage people?
It only seems fair, Joe Sestak. Thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom with us, some of your experience on this sacred day, September 11th.
Have a good day today, please.